From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
Now, of course, as we said, we're recording this en media res, in the middle of the story, so things can change, and we'll do our best to follow up with updates. But when we last left you, we were talking a little bit about the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment is very important. It's a thing that you may have heard sort of flittering around the headlines pre-COVID, flittering around the headlines just every so often. It is a pretty young amendment in terms of, in relation to the other amendments. It deals with the problem of presidential succession in the case of disability. So it clarifies that the vice president becomes president if the serving president does some of the following things. They die, they resign, they're removed from office. And we've seen this invoked before, when Nixon resigned, right?
Yep.
That was invoked. And then the appointment of Nelson Rockefeller fell under the 25th Amendment. Ronald Reagan underwent a colonoscopy in 1985, and they had already invoked Section 3 of the 25th Amendment. So it's happened before. You know what I mean? It's not like a crazy space age into the world constitutional crisis, but it's a danger. It's a dangerous game, because imagine you're the president of the U.S., you have an operation and you go under for that operation. Someone administers anesthesia. And what if during that period of just a few hours when you're out, a nuclear exchange occurs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What happens?
Or
the president is out.
Exactly. President's under. What are you going to do? It's really fascinating. It's just you mentioned Section 3. It's fascinating that when that occurs, the president has to submit essentially something in written, the declaration that this is happening and declaring that the vice president is now in power until I write to you again and say that, no, I'm back.
Do you think they're like temporary nuke codes or something that get shared? Like, I don't know. I'm wondering, who has all that proprietary information? Does the VP have all the same info as the president? All the same access? It seems like it would have to be temporarily handed over to him in some way.
That's interesting. I don't know. The football changes hands for a couple hours.
Nuclear football. Well, the way I believe it's laid out requires multiple parties in the government to interact, at least, even if the call is the president's, you still have to have multiple people in the chain actually deploying weapon. I think we can all agree no one should ever trust any single individual with a suitcase such that they could just, whenever they want, send nukes. That seems really weird.
I hope it's one of those situations like in the movies where everyone has to turn a key at the same exact time, and enter the codes and all. I mean, that's how I'm picturing it, at least.
Crack a code book, like snap, and then Delta Alpha 9 or Bravo Tequila, Gazanga. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't remember the codes. Yeah. Habanero. That's a Patriot. Anyway, so it's different. Another example, just to show you how free, this is a weird thing to me. So Reagan got a colonoscopy, right? That's the 25th Amendment. The colonoscopy, it turns out, is like a driving force for the 25th Amendment. On June 29th, 2002, George W. Bush invoked Section 3, transferring power to Dick Cheney for a colonoscopy.
Temporarily, right?
Temporarily.
Not right, for the rest of the time.
The 25th or the colonoscopy? No, they were both temporary. He transferred power again in 2007, June 21st, during, wait for it, a second colonoscopy.
The man likes his colonoscopies. You know?
Well, I mean, he's being safe, guys. You gotta,
I know,
you gotta
I
take
know.
precautions.
I'm teasing.
And he liked his continuation of government. So the question that has come up a lot recently is, the president is in the hospital. Should we prepare
Yeah.
for continuation of government? And for some people, it's completely understandable that would be seen as an alarmist move, right? For supporters of the president, of course, that conjures the specter of a possible coup or something like that. But just to be clear, the way that the 25th Amendment works, it doesn't really skip steps. It goes to the vice president. So even if there were, for some reason, a situation wherein the current president of the U.S. was rendered unable to do their duties, now that's a big term, and a lot of conditions fit inside that term. If they were temporarily or permanently unable to, the powers devolve to the vice president under the 25th Amendment.
But it has to be invoked by the president himself or themselves?
Yeah, there are a couple different ways for it to happen. Section 3 is specifically presidential declaration. So that's when the president knows something's coming up. I'm going to get surgery, et cetera.
Yeah.
But surely if, yes, that makes absolute sense. But if there was a situation where he was in a car accident and maybe ended up in a coma, there would have to be a way to invoke that officially through other channels if he was not able to do it himself.
Section 4 talks about how the VP and Congress can work together to essentially say the president cannot uphold the office at this particular juncture. Guys, I have such a clear image of Dick Cheney going into the Oval Office one day and saying, George, I'm going to need you to get a colonoscopy on the 25th at 3 p.m. He's like, what? Well, why, man?
Just do it.
Yeah, he's like, trust me.
Gotta have a little bit of an underbite, a little bit of a pragmatic jaw there.
God,
Good.
terrifying.
That Christian Bale Cheney. I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So you're right. There are 4 sections, essentially. First one is president has died, president resigns. Automatically, vice president, you're in. You got tapped. And then second would be a vice presidential vacancy. So whenever there is a vacancy for any reason in the role of the vice president, then the president says, I want this person to be my vice president, my new VP, and there has to be a majority vote, both houses of Congress, for that to go through. The third is the president saying, I am unable to do the powers and duties of my office, maybe even temporarily, so vice president's going to step in for me. And then the fourth is just what you described, Matt, the VP and what are called principal officers step in.
Yep.
And that's the controversial one right there.
Yeah. Within here, there is a real... I can't remember if they covered any of this stuff on House of Cards. I think they did, some of it at least. But the concept that if the vice president can no longer be the vice president, then somebody can swoop in and it doesn't require any kind of election at all. It just needs the House, it needs Congress to say yes.
Right. That's a vote. The American people don't get a vote on that one, which is, well, I guess the argument people would say is that they do get a vote because their congressional representatives represent them, which is true in theory. It's true in theory, but a lot of things are true in theory.